Do you ever feel like your phone has a mind of its own, constantly pulling you away from what truly matters? Well, you're not alone. You've probably seen that everyone else has this problem too. It's in a world designed for distraction. It's easy to lose control. But what if I told you there's a way to reclaim your focus and truly live in the present? That's what we're going to discuss today. How to use a solution focused approach to be able to live in the present and regain your focus. And this is what we talk about every week on this podcast. How do we use solution focused approach to improve our health and well-being? So I'm here with Dr. Deborah Teplow, our co-founder here at Stamina Lab. Dr. Teplow, do you ever struggle with focus with the phone, or do you ever see anybody else in your friends or family that struggle with the phone?
Well, thank God. I don't know how I do it, but the phone is not my thing. I mean, I appreciate it, but I don't get sucked into it. Yeah, I don't know why. I definitely am on my computer all day, not the phone. That being said, I know a lot of people who are on their phone, and it drives me crazy. I'm noticing parents, lots of parents who are just on their phones, not paying attention to their kids. And it actually reminds me of studies done over decades called Stillface, where it's with Ed Tronick, I think it's at Stanford. He took moms and little babies, I'm talking 3 months old, put them in a room and had them converse. Mama goes goo goo gaga and the baby goes goo goo gaga. And it's just great. And then at a signal, the mom goes into a still face, just blank face. Baby goes goo goo gaga, and the mom just has still face. And that persists, and within about a few moments, baby absolutely freaks out because there is no co-regulation. There's no communication. The nervous system goes bonkers. And I just think about that today with parents and kids, where the parents are just glued on their phones, and also about relationships are we really present for each other?
Yeah, that's connected with some other studies about how here in Austin, where I'm at the University of Texas, they did a study about just having the presence of a phone, even if the phone is turned upside down, still quietly taxes the brain, affects our nervous system, keeps us detached at a certain level that even when, like I said, even when it's face down, it's having an impact. Even when its presence is having an impact. And so I thought that was a really interesting bit of research to show that this is pervasive, so pervasive. Even if you're not on the phone, it's having an impact.
Absolutely. And that also correlates with another study done a couple of years ago related to phones in the presence of conversation. And what this researcher found is if you have a phone, you're talking to somebody, you're at lunch or breakfast or whatever, you're having conversation, you both have phones, they're face down on the table, you're looking at each other, it still has an effect on your conversation. Why? Because the presence of the phone says, I am willing to be interrupted. And so what this researcher found is that people don't go as deep into conversation. They stay superficial because of the fear that, hey, they could get into some deep stuff and the phone will just interrupt it and they'll get derailed.
That's happened. I've been in conversations where that's happened. My tactic is I just stop until they get awareness back, and they're like, "Wait, sorry." I'm like, "No, just waiting for you to get back from wherever journey you were on there."
Yeah. And then it's like, why bother if you're, the question is, how important are you? You know, if you can be interrupted by the phone.
Yeah, and it's also has a health problem too, as well for you. As it might not seem like it, but there is a level of stress that's happening to your body. You're getting released cortisol every time a notification appears or you check that phone. A little bit of cognitive load will happen every time, and over a full day, that starts to add up, where you are getting in so much cortisol into your body that's affecting your stress levels, and then obviously the stress over time has all kinds of negative benefits to your health and well-being, and leads to all cause mortality pretty much with the stress that comes in there. So that constant microdose of stress from the phone is having a health issue, not just taking you away from the people that you want to interact with, but your long-term benefits there.
Right, taking you away from your healthy living.
Yeah, and your performance and whatever, being able to be showing up for what you want and the things you want to do in your life. And I think that's really what we want to talk about with the solution focused approach to this, is that it's really about being able to show up for the things that matter to you and the people that matter to you. And how can we do that? Because anybody you talk to says, no, I don't want to be addicted to this device. I don't want to be constantly checking to it. I don't want it to constantly be taking my focus away. I don't want it to constantly be giving me that little bit of stress into my life, but I just don't know how to get away from it.
Yeah.
So what's some of the solution focused ideas that we can start to questions that we can start to ask ourselves that will help us or help anybody who's listening to be able to begin to take away some of that loss of focus that you're getting and that mental energy that you're putting towards these devices?
Right. Well, I think the first thing is to really ask yourself, have a hard conversation with yourself about, what do you want? Who do you want to be for yourself? What kind of life do you want to live? What kind of future do you want to have? If that stress, that little ding, 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 the notifications, it has a health effect. It's like being around noise all the time. We know it has a deleterious health effect. So ask yourself, what do you want for yourself long term? Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up in the world? Who do you want to be for your friends, your family, the people you work with? Take a hard look. What are your values? If you value connection, if you value that sense of belonging, that generosity of spirit, then bite the bullet. Say, what do I really want? Do I want the, what do you call it? Like the fast pleasures or quick pleasures? Or do I want something of more enduring value?
What
That's first thing.
was a challenge, and even with people who get to that, so they're listening to this podcast already, so I'm assuming that there's some level, I mean, they're already on that path to being that person that they
Mm-hmm.
value just by listening to this podcast. And so, you tried all the things where you put the time limits on, and try to remove some of the notifications. But these devices are the best behavioral scientists in the world are working on these devices to get you to continue to go back and use them and be a distraction. It's an attention economy. Even with that intention, it feels like I get there's a lot of guilt and shame because you keep getting sucked back into it, and it's not really anybody's fault because that's
Absolutely.
the case. But the guilt and shame is there because I just can't make the change.
Right, right. And so, yeah, that's one thing, is that guilt and shame, and that they do have the best behavioral scientists working on it. So it's you against, the machine. And at the same time, so first of all, what do you really want? Do you want to be present? That's first, because I don't think that people really, it's just like, well, it just is out there, it's just like, it's what happens. If you're listening to this, great. You've already made a step in the direction of authoring your story with the words you want, in the tone you want. And for some people, it may just be, a casual kind of passive, oh, they're out there and that's kind of how it is these days. So taking that hard look and saying, how do I want to show up? And what will be different? Ask yourself that, and ask yourself not only what will I be doing if I'm, it's not that I don't want to do the phone, is what will you be doing instead?
Yeah,
So
instead.
make sure that you're asking yourself, when I'm not on my phone, picture yourself, I wake up in the morning, instead of picking up that phone from my nightstand, what am I doing instead? Well, I realize, I don't have to have the phone on my nightstand. Really? Then what are you going to do? I'm going to put it, by the front door. So I make sure I grab it when I go out and have my ways, whatever.
That's key because you're saying, okay, oh, this phone is driving me crazy. I'm over these distractions. I don't want this. I don't want this to be distracted. I don't want to be I don't want to be interrupted in my conversations. I don't want any of this. But well, what do you want instead? You have to have that instead. In the morning for me, I said, okay, my instead of checking that phone in the morning is, okay, I want to listen to some calming music. So I put calming music on as my instead for the first half hour or hour of the day, rather than looking at that phone right away. So that's one of the insteads that I've put in there.
Right, right. Yeah. Another instead that works really great in the morning is instead of just getting sucked into your phone inside is at least go outside, get some sun, get some sunlight or, natural
Yeah,
light.
because instead is actually I want to be calmer in the morning, not just get all amped up in the morning. So what are things that I enjoy that I can do that is that instead for for you, Dr. Teplow, it's going outside for the walk. For me, it's putting on some calming music. But for the person listening, it could be anything that is helping them achieve their instead.
Yeah, and ways to kind of take a little crack at a time is change the environment. Okay, so maybe you're going to use your phone, but change the environment, change up the patterns. It just loosens a little. If, instead of having like 100% strong toehold, you're loosening a little bit. Think about the environmental factors that can help too. So we'd say, what do we want instead? And really drill down, what difference would that make? Imagine, who's the first person you're going to have a conversation with that you may usually just have your phone there, right? Imagine, how would that conversation be different? How would it be better? And make the assumption it will be better. We know the phone takes your attention away from whatever you're doing. So make that assumption and drill down on exactly how would it be better? How would you know it would be better? What would the other person notice?
Yeah. So we've defined that because we want to know where we need a direction of where we're going to go. So our brain has to know where it's going to go. At the same time, again, we have the best behavior designers in the world trying to get us sucked into this. So even with that, and like I said, putting time limits on and all these things you want to do because you want to get into that instead, and you're doing your best to do those behaviors that are going to get you to that and whatever the instead place is, if that's the calm that I was giving in for my mornings. And but then I still look at it and I'm like, why did I do this again? Because I got sucked in now 10 minutes of doom scrolling in there, I'm beating myself up. By the time I realize, oh my god, I've just been in here for 10 minutes. Dang, why do I keep doing this? And so again, beating myself up for what can I do? What can I do if I do keep doing that? What can someone do if they keep in that same situation? Because again, these are so addictive machines that it keeps happening.
Yeah, well, realize you're not perfect. But here, that's the downside. You're not perfect. But the upside of you're not perfect is you don't even do your problem perfectly, because there must be times when you're not on your phone scrolling. And so that's really, that's the second part of the conversation to have with yourself. First is, what do you want? Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up in the world? Second is, what's already working for you, and amplify that. Example, I'd like to use, and you may have heard it, before I was working with a faith-based group, and some of the people smoked, and that was a concern. And so the question was, well, they're just chain smokers. How in the world will they smoke? They've tried everything, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, look for when they're not smoking. Well, what do you mean? They're chain smokers. Well, do they smoke at church? Well, of course they don't smoke at church. You can't do that. Okay. Do they go to the movies? Yes. Do they smoke in the movies? Well, no, you can't smoke in the movies. How do they do that? Similarly with your phone.
Yeah, and that's a good comparison, the smoking and your phone, because they are both addictive machines, devices. Yeah, so there's times when you aren't using your phone, and what are you doing then? Noticing what you're doing then, how you're doing that.
Exactly. And take into account the environmental factors, the social factors. Environment doesn't just mean where you are, but what's around you, visual cues. And also, what are you doing instead of your phone? What enables you to do whatever it is, and that's not your phone.
Yeah, for me, one of the key things when I go, obviously we don't talk about training for my marathon here. So I go out running. I don't take my phone. I mean, I'm out for an hour or 2 hours running. I don't want to carry that phone with me. So there's a time when I'm not using my phone, and just because it doesn't fit into the environment that I'm in, it doesn't fit the activity that I'm in. So that's a good thing, is to say, okay, now that's when I'm doing it, but then how am I doing it? Well, again, like it says, it doesn't fit into the environment that I'm in, so it's pretty easy how.
Right. And I think another thing to think is, is what are you doing instead? And often it's that you're engaged in something else. You're
Yeah.
engaged. And I just think about the old days before people had phones. What did they do that engaged them? I mean,
Hmm.
I don't, people, some people whittled, guys whittled. They
Yes.
had a sharp knife and they whittled wood and created things. And so, are you engaged in a rich, meaningful life? I think to some extent, some people have sacrificed that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially back to the smoking comparison. Is that with when they're at a movie, they're engaged in the movie, even if it wasn't allowed. I mean, they're engaged in that movie. Um, in the church service, I'm assuming that's the same thing that they're providing. They had a good speaker there that was engaging them. Then that's the same thing as you said, is that's being lost, perhaps, or being sacrificed in interpersonal relationships that we talk about at the beginning here, is that the sacrificing that engagement that you have with somebody else by having that phone on the table.
Yeah. And I noticed it. And here's where values comes into it, because I noticed it with my grandchildren, and I've got several that are under 3 or 4. And it's easy to be on your phone. It is addictive. And so, how many times do you want to stack the red blocks on the blue blocks and then topple them over? It can get boring. Phone's a lot more interesting. I mean, check in with, not the Kardashians, but whoever it is, the latest influencer, that's a lot more gripping. It's made to be addictive and gripping versus the 40-second time you've built the red block tower. Then for me, what helped is for my values to kick in. What do I really care about? I want my grandchildren to know that I love them. I care about them. And the more I was present and paid attention to the 40-second time we built the blocks, the more fascinating it became. Because, people, I mean, how many hours, Glenn, you've done your, stint of very deep meditation. How many, hundreds of hours do people put in to develop beginner's mind?
Yeah, and that's I think a great analogy too, because when you're doing that, your mind is wandering constantly, constantly, constantly. That's what the mind does. And so it's when the noticing is when the practice happens. When you notice that your mind is watered, the question that you or the saying you say to yourself is "welcome back," because that's what I do, is welcome back, welcome back. I've noticed. And same thing if you were doom scrolling, it's the same thing. Your mind has been going off on welcome back. Give yourself some compassion there. Welcome back. You've just realized what's happening, and that's just a practice. Every time, welcoming back, that you will notice more often, more quickly, because you're practicing that noticing. And that's what the practice of the meditation is. And we don't have to be on a cushion meditating to do that. It's just the practice of, you can even do it with your doom scrolling. What was I doing? Instead of the guilt and shame, welcome back. I've caught myself, and now I have the opportunity, the space to make that decision of what I want instead.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think, what we're talking about is number one is decide what you want, who you want to show up as, what's already working for you. When are you able to put the phone down? And then look for ways that, think about, how do you want to live? What do you want to do with your time? What's the Mary Oliver? We should get it. It's, what are you going to do with your one precious wildlife? Something like that. There you go.
My Mary Oliver book right here.
Yeah, yeah, you only have one precious life and it goes quickly. So what do you want to do instead? What are your values? Do you want to be scrolling on your phone, or do you want to really be connecting with someone, with a friend, a family member, a kid in the park digging for worms? That's fascinating. It's going with beginner's mind.
And the
And that's really,
curiosity. And the
yeah,
curiosity
curiosity.
too. Curiosity, being curious. The blocks example, you're right. It gets boring doing the blocks every time. But how can you be curious? What can you be curious about in that situation? Just cultivating that practice of curiosity.
Yeah, exactly. And and treat every moment of awareness as a success signal. If even if you're doom scrolling, what are you doing with your body? How are you breathing? Be present. And then and design your digital habits around your values. So instead of doom scrolling, if you're just like, I just got to hang on to this phone, what can you do that would be more valuable to you? Is it listening to music, even if it is on the phone?
The other thing I was going to say too about that, I want to go back to the guilt of catching yourself and being frustrated, is that to, if you were doom scrolling for 10 minutes or however long it is, or you're being just distracted for how long it is, when you do welcome yourself back, instead of beating yourself up, asking the question of, what kept me from doom scrolling
Yeah.
longer? What kept me from being on this device for longer? And that gives you a clue to some of the capacity that you have for this change that you're already on by listening to this podcast.
Right. That was such a great point. Right. So maybe you even were on your phone for an hour, but not an hour and a half. What enabled you to get off of it? And then I think that the next question is, what do you want to do next? So imagine, get a really clear picture of who you want to be, how you want to be behaving, acting, when you're alone. Do you want to be fascinated with some new hobby or thing, or sitting on your phone with influencers? Make a choice and then follow that up. So suppose that you were developing a hobby. Even the next week, what would be different about what you were doing? And so start living your life, viscerally in that future point where instead of doing the addiction to the phone, you're doing something else. You got to name it so you can live it in the future, in your imagination, in your mental rehearsal.
You got to name it so you can live it. Okay, I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap up. And if today's episode resonated with you, and if you're ready to move beyond the willpower of that trying to get off that phone and align your behavior change with your identity, we invite you to join us inside Stamina Lab, whether it's through our core health group coaching or our next health quest. We're here to help you become the person you're already on the path to being by listening to this podcast, as I said before. Also hit like and subscribe. We talk about solution focused strategies every week, and this helps with the algorithm, as you know. We have a great assessment that we want you to take. It's the how flexible is your mindset, and that this mindset flexibility will help you with your digital distraction. So that link is in the show notes for you to take that assessment. And if you want to learn more about our unique solution focused approach and book a complimentary coaching session, visit staminalab.io, and please leave your questions and comments in below. We'd love to answer those. Thank you, Dr. Teplow.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening. Until next time, remember, you are your own lab, you are your own experiment, and you are your own best coach. Be well.